Welcome to the Drake Shake, a polar podcast hosted by seasoned Antarctica expedition guide Neil Drake. With over 10 seasons guiding and 1,000 days spent on the ice, Neil will be joined by fellow guides and industry experts to share their years of experience and knowledge to help you make the most informed decision when planning your once-in-a-lifetime adventure. From picking the right itinerary to deciding when to go, we will cover it all. The Drake Shake is brought to you by Antarctica Travel Group and Let'sGoPolar.com. Now, here's your host, Neil Drake, with this week's episode.
You know what I think is kind of funny is that I don't think Rico has even listened to a single episode of the podcast.
Yes, I have.
You have?
Yes, I did.
I didn't think you did. So
Okay.
you'll know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
All right, you're not in trouble.
I'm gonna pop quiz him on the episodes. Are you ready,
they've
Rico?
all the cold openers.
I listened to Phil's episode.
Have you ever been on a podcast, Rico?
Yes, I have. I have been on 10X's podcast. Remember? For the launch of the charter? Wasn't really a podcast, but I was there.
Well, you're going to be great. All right, let's start this episode. Welcome, everybody, to a new episode of the Drake Shake podcast. My name is Neil Drake, and I'll be your host. And as always, I am joined by Nikki. Nikki, how's it going?
I am fantastic. Things are really, really good. I am still in the middle of the ocean, which is my favorite place to be. So all's good over here.
People are probably wondering why you're still in the middle of the ocean. It's because you're on a 33-day itinerary. If you've listened to the previous episodes, Nikki's on the epic 33-day itinerary. And you're coming up to the end.
Absolutely
We're almost
epic.
done.
No, we just hit the halfway mark today. We're officially halfway. We're on day 17 of a 34-day trip.
Well, we
Yeah,
can't wait to
baby.
get you back, but thank God you've got great internet so we can continue to record, and you've been continuing to work in the office, and things have been pretty smooth sailing, actually, literally
Yeah.
on our end. Maybe not for you. You've been dodging one storm after the other.
We've hit some really rough weather, but the expedition crew has been fantastic. Oceanwide has been doing a really, really lovely job. So even though the waves have been a bit choppy, the vibes are up and everyone's been safe. So
What do we got today? We got special guest, great special guest, probably a special guest that's long overdue. We have Ricardo. Say hi, Ricardo.
Hello. Hi, Neil. Hi, Nikki. Hi, everyone.
hello.
You just got back from an
Yes.
equally long trip on
Yes, I
with
did.
Swan Hellenic. What ship were you on?
Yeah, I was on the Diana on a 21-day trip from Antarctica to South Africa. So also a lot of days at sea.
And you stopped at all the
Lots
same
of sea
places
days.
that Nikki's on her way to see, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I stopped in. We went to the peninsula first, but then South Georgia, and then Tristan da Cunha, which is where Nikki is right now, and then we ended in Cape Town.
We have our lobster dinner tonight.
Yes. Oh, the Tristan lobster is awesome.
I'm excited.
Well, if you're listening to this and you're wondering why the people on this show are constantly out at the ocean, it has a lot to do with today's episode. Today's episode is going to be talking about picking the right company, or just picking a company in general. Rico, if you've been listening to the show, which you say you have been, we're sort of planning the show or releasing episodes in an order in which I think people are in the planning process, things that are getting considered one step at a time. It's almost like when my wife and I were planning the wedding, and the wedding coordinator sent us one thing at a time. Okay, first we pick our florist. When that's done, then we pick the chairs. Once the chairs were done, then we pick the photographer. We're trying to build this
Like
Pipeline.
stepping
Roadmap.
stones.
roadmap. Yeah, we're trying to build
Yeah,
this.
roadmap
Yeah, we're
is
trying
a
to
good
build
one.
this roadmap, right? And if everybody at home is wondering why Ricardo is on the show, I'm going to sort of spill the beans. This will be our cold opener. Rico is the brains behind everything at ATG and Let's Go Polar. I get a lot of credit that I don't deserve, because at the end of the day, Rico is CFO, COO, CO, and all the
So-
things.
I've been told I'm the project manager too.
Yeah, a little bit of everything. Quick little background. Rico and I met in Iguazu Falls a little over 10
Years ago?
years, 11 years ago. August will be 11 years.
Yes.
Rico owned a hostel in Iguazu Falls, and I was a guest at his hostel. And then I stayed there for on and off for almost 2 years, and we became
longer than that.
family. And we became pretty much family. Rico is my best friend in the entire world, and now he pretty much runs my company. So he's just He's my right-hand man. He's everything to me. You're on the show because you've got as much experience, I think, working in this industry as I do, planning for people, if not more, because you're handling the day-to-day and you're overseeing the sales team and you're overseeing everything. So we're excited to have you on the show.
Thank you.
I don't think it's going to be too long of an episode because I think it's a pretty straightforward topic, but I think that we want to sort of break down for guests, like we do all the other topics, a little bit of the overthinking that happens when it comes to picking a company that you're going to go with. You have been with multiple companies on different ships with different operators. Nikki, you've been on with 3 operators now.
Yep, 3 so far.
And Rico, you've been with 3. So we can kind of talk a little bit about how these companies differ, but also where in the planning stage does the company come into factor? That's I think what that's the meat of this episode. So right off the bat, I'm going to say the quiet part out loud, which is I don't think picking the company as important as people think it is. Do you agree?
I agree completely. Yeah.
Yep.
I think
100%.
no matter which company you select, you're going to have a great time in Antarctica.
And that's the truth. I think
That's
that
the episode.
people. Done. All right.
See you later.
Thanks for tuning in. My name is Neil Drake, and that was the shake. Like, so, no, it's so true. It's so true because you wouldn't exist in this industry if you were not good at delivering a trip to Antarctica. It just wouldn't happen. There are some new companies in the industry who are trying to prove themselves. I will mention that as sort of a caveat or an asterisk to it. But in our experience, I can't name a bad company in the industry. Or there's companies that we don't book or companies that we don't work with. And that isn't a testament to them not being a good company. Their offerings are just a little bit different than what our clients are looking for. We lean more on the expedition side of things than we do on the luxury side of things. We don't work with ships that are over 200 passengers. There are certain companies that only have larger ships. That's why we don't work with them. But if you're looking for a luxury experience and you don't mind if the ship is over 200 passengers, there's a whole market out there for that. Ideally, Rico, when people are starting to plan their trip, do you ever see people come in and say from the get-go, I want to go with this company because they've heard great things about it?
Sometimes we do see they heard about a specific company, but then when we show them the other companies and we show that they are sometimes similar, sometimes they offer something a little bit different in another company, they get open to learning more about all the companies that we work with. So it does happen that some clients will come to us and say, oh, I heard so many good things about this company, I have to go with them. But then when we show everything that's out there, it opens the, how to say, the menu. Because I think there's a lot of reviews about some companies, and some companies you don't read that many reviews online. Many people go, when they first come to us, they only go, they first want the companies that they read the review previously. And there are companies that are equally as good, but you don't find that many reviews about them. So they come with their mindset, oh, I want to go on this specific company. But then when we show them other companies as well, it does change their mind to be open to like multiple companies.
And Nikki, you're working in sales much more often than Rico is these days. Yeah. Are you ever seeing people who message you and say, hey, I saw reviews about this one company and I'd like to look at trips for them?
Yeah, 100%. We get that a lot where people come in with the mindset of, oh, I've heard good things about this company. This is the company that I want to book with. And then as the conversation is continuing, I'm asking, what's your budget? What sort of things are you interested in? And those pieces of information don't necessarily mesh with the company that they had in mind. And then I ask, are you open to other operators? And the answer is pretty much always yes. And then I show them products that are more in line with the things that they're actually looking for. And I'd say 9 times out of 10, people end up booking with a company that is maybe something that they haven't heard of before, or that they weren't necessarily open to from the beginning. You don't know what you don't know, right? So once they have the information, they can move forward with the information.
And I think that's exactly what happens usually. They don't know what they don't know. I think that's a good sentence. Yeah. And sometimes they set their minds in a company, but like Nikki said, sometimes what they actually want is not specifically what that company provides. So when we when we do that match of what they actually want with what the companies offer, I agree. Like 90% of the times they will change.
I'm going to touch on one thing that Rico mentioned about the quantity of the reviews and how sometimes there are companies who have a lot more reviews than another one. And if you think about it, it's a lot of it has to do with certain companies have 3 or 4 ships that carry 199 passengers on those ships. Do the math. What's 3 ships times average 13 voyages times 200 people per voyage? So you're going to get these companies are going to bring way more people. Where if you have a company like A21 who had 2 ships that are each 62 passengers, you've got a lot less people going on an A21 trip every season, but that doesn't mean there's less people going because it's not a good product. It's going because they're a limited load operator. So there's going to be a lot less reviews about that. They are going to be harder to find. And another thing that I've noticed over and over and over again is that in the Facebook group, the Antarctica Travel Group, people will post up, I'm looking for recommendations for a good operator. Who did you go with? Every single person will comment that their operator was the best. They'll say something like, go with this company, they're the best. Or I went with so-and-so, you have to go with them, they're the best in the business. And then you ask yourself, how many other companies have they been with? Because like Rico mentioned, there are no bad companies. And as long as the trip went well, everyone's going to come home raving about how great their experience was and how their company was fantastic. So it actually becomes, I think, more overwhelming for people when they see these comments in the Facebook posts, because now they're asking themselves, well, if everybody's so good, how do I choose? And what Nikki was getting at, and we'll sort of elaborate on, because that's sort of like, that's the context of this whole episode, is that when you're picking a company, you might not have a choice at what company you go with. If you say, well, I've heard really good things about this company. Let's use G Adventures as an example. Great operator. We work with G Adventures. They're a fantastic expedition driven operator. If you say, oh, I saw really good things about G Adventure, I want to go with them. And then you say, I want to do a fly trip. Well, you can't go with G Adventures anymore. If you say, I want to have a balcony cabin, well, we've just eliminated 30% of the operators that are out there because their ships don't offer balcony cabins. So if you say, I want to go to South Georgia, then you may be eliminating another operator because they might not operate in South Georgia. So the point I'm making is that we have so much more criteria that we need to work out before we even start to consider what operator you're going to go with.
Yeah. And the thing about the operators, I think that a myth that we run into a lot is that people say, oh, I want to go with this operator because I heard that their expedition staff is better than others. Is that true?
I want to say no. There is a caveat to that. I don't think that people realize that guides are independent contractors. We move around the industry. We've worked in multiple companies. Rico, you just came back from a trip with Swan Hellenic. Were there guides from there that you saw from Albatross?
Absolutely, yeah. There were guides from that already operated with Albatross, with Sea Spirits. They all said that they're freelancers and they operate with pretty much all companies they can, and they move around because sometimes the schedule of the company also doesn't work with their schedules.
There are core groups for each company, and that is sort of the foundation that these companies build their staff off of. So I don't want to mislead anybody in that sense. The truth of it is that there are companies who I would say are staffed a little more robust than others, but that doesn't mean the companies that aren't as robust have bad guides, because half of them probably came from a contract on that other ship as well. Does that make sense? Am I explaining that kind of, you know what I mean? So like, you can't just go be an expedition leader on a ship if you have no experience. You can't just jump into that role. You have to have been trained. You have to have a lot of experience. So when somebody says, oh, I want to go on a company that has the best guides, that's not really a factor we consider because the guides are moving around the industry so much. You're going to have a specialist on board. You're going to find there's a marine ecologist, there's a geologist, there's a historian, there's usually a glaciologist. There's roles that we need to fit. And this is exactly why the guides move around the industry so much. I was contracted on a ship and they would say, okay, we need you for 4 trips. And then somebody will say, we need a French speaking geologist. and I'm not French speaking and I'm not a geologist. So I'll come off and make room for that person. And I still have to work. So I go move over to another ship. So we move around the industry and it's promoted inside the industry. The industry itself loves having the guys move around because we work with different ships. We learn new things. We bring them back to the companies that we might consider like our home company. And it helps the whole program become better. And that's to another point. No matter what ship you go on, and I want you all to attest to this because you've all been with different companies, the program on board is nearly identical no matter who you go with.
Yep.
100%. I agree.
Exactly what I was going to say next.
Because the guides move around so much, the program on board has become so standardized so that I could go work on a company I've never worked with before. And then other than learning just a couple different procedures on maybe where we embark the guests and how we do certain things, the program itself is identical. You wake up, you have breakfast, you do your morning landing, you come home, the ship moves, you go out again in the afternoon, you come back, you have an evening recap, dinner, and then evening entertainment or something like that. It's an identical program no matter where you go. There are differences that happen. It depends on passenger load, how many guides are on board, things like that. It depends on the ship size. So there are some differences, but at the end of the day, what really separates one company from another is what we like to say is the DNA of the company. This is where I would say, you know what I mean? This is where I would say if I'm talking to a potential passenger and I'm not set on picking a company for them yet, I will ask them, do you prefer expedition? Do you prefer luxury? Because there is a difference between the two. And if you look at a company like Enterply is built for the people who want a true expedition company, ocean-wide, fantastic expedition company. They have older ships, smaller passenger load ships. They really like to get into the expedition side of things. They do have a new ship that's got a little flair of luxury on it, but it is still at the core. It's an expedition ship. Then you go, a lot of these companies that are down the middle, they're expedition companies that are offering some creature comforts of luxury. This is sort of where the industry has shifted for the majority of companies. Quark, Polar Latitudes, Aurora. These are companies that I would say, and again, you guys have been with both of these companies. Would you agree that that's sort of what we call the hybrid lane, where it's expedition at its core, but it starts to offer a little nicer ships, balcony cabins, a little more hospitality on board. What do you think?
Yeah, 100%.
So as the ships are similar, it gets even confusing. They operate so similarly that the ships are the same. So it gets kind of confusing which company is which, because the operations are very similar to all the companies, the ship layout. And what changes mostly, I think, is expedition team maybe.
Certain companies will have maybe like a more science-focused trip than others, right? You were with Swan Hellenic and they had a lab on board.
So yeah, I was on board the Swan Hellenic. They have an expedition lab and they do citizen science where they have one Zodiac dedicated for science. They will collect samples from the sea and also maybe some ice samples, and they will analyze at the lab. So they, especially at sea days when you don't have any expeditions, they will bring passengers to the science lab, and you can see the samples in the microscope. They will teach you about what you're learning, what you're seeing there. So it's pretty cool.
And you might not find that lab experience on, say, Poseidon. The Sea Spirit doesn't have a lab because it's a smaller ship, but that doesn't mean that Swan Hellenic is a better company than Poseidon. And you have the advantage on Poseidon is you have 113 guests versus how many are on the Diana, so that doesn't make Poseidon any better than Swan Hellenic. The idea is that no company is really better than one another. And I wouldn't fixate so much on planning your trip based around the company, because that's the other thing. If you say, hey, I've heard great things about Poseidon, and I've been with Poseidon. They're an amazing company. I actually recommend them all the time when it allows. But what I mean by when it allows is if you say, I heard Poseidon is a fantastic company and I want to go with them, you have 13 options to pick from because they have one ship with 13 itineraries for the year, and that's it. Whereas if you open yourself to other companies, you're going to open up to so many more possibilities. Maybe you'll find something a little more budget friendly. Maybe you'll find something a little more luxurious. Maybe for example, activities. Maybe the activities are booked out on one of these ships and then you're like, well, I really wanted to go with that company. open yourself up. That's sort of what we're trying to get at here. So Nikki, of the companies that you've been with, have you noticed a major difference in any of these companies?
No, as far as the operations in the day-to-day are concerned, it's been the exact same thing. The biggest difference is the ships themselves. So when I was on my Albatross trip, there was a hot tub, and that was super cool. And they don't have that on Oceanwide, but I'm not necessarily missing that. It hasn't subtracted to the experience at all. When I was on Aurora, there was a sauna, and that was great. And I used it once for about 5 minutes. And it was a great 5 minutes, but it didn't make or break my trip. You know what I mean? So I think that if you're someone who really, really cares about those additional amenities, that's something to note when you're talking to an agent or when you're planning your trip. If that's not important to you, that's also something to note when you're trying to figure out your trip. There's no perfect company. There's no perfect trip. It's just what works best for you and for what you want to get out of your experience.
And in addition to what Nikki said, of course, the amenities are important, but also the extra activities that you mentioned, Neil, because sometimes a company has a great trip with all the amenities. Like I just came back from Swan Hellenic. They have sauna, they have hot tubs, they have all-inclusive drink package, but the only extra activity they offer is kayaking. They don't offer camping. They don't offer snowshoeing. So actually they do offer snowshoeing, but not in many trips. So if camping is important for you, you're not going with Swan Hellenic or with a company that doesn't offer it. It's really important to consider which activities you're interested in before selecting the company.
We could really just sum the episode up right here. It doesn't need to be a long thought out episode. It's exactly right. I think there's an order of operations to what we think about, right? First off, what time of year do you want to go and what itinerary do you want to go on? We just did an episode about the itinerary. Once you've decided what itinerary you want, then we talk about what time of year do you want to go. Then the next thing, I really think that it just divides it. We need to find out what your budget is. When we ask people what your budget is, we're not asking so that we can sell the most expensive trip to you. If anything, it's the other way around. We're trying to find you a trip as much below that budget as possible and meets all the same criteria. I mean, Nikki, what is that the case for you?
Yep. 100,000%. I love taking it as a challenge. If you tell me you've got a budget of $20,000, I'm going to try to find you a trip that meets all of your other margins for so much less, because then you're going to be so happy. You're going to be so excited. But the reason that we're asking you for your budget is so that we can know what frame to work within. If you have a budget of $10,000, there's no point in me sending you the trips that are starting at $20,000 or $25,000. It's a waste of your brain space. It's a waste of your time. So when we're asking, like Neil said, we're not trying to get the most out of you. That is not what we're here for. We don't care about that at all. We just want to find you things that can reasonably work for you and for what works for you.
If somebody said to me, I have a $20,000 budget, and then I find a trip for $10,000 that meets all of the criteria, I'm going to send it over. But I don't think people realize how time intensive it is for us as well. Right? Doing this research, it is a process, and we want to be as thorough and detailed as we possibly can. So when we ask you what your budget is, we're asking you so that we don't waste our time, we don't waste your time. And the point of that being is that there are certain companies that fit into certain budget brackets. And if you say that my budget for a classic Antarctica trip is $8,000, I can eliminate 6 or 7 companies because we just know that they're never going to fall into that price range. So that's what we were saying about before. You might not have the choice to pick your company. So I wouldn't get so hung up on it right away. I would first start to work out all the other things that are most important to you. And then only then, if you have 3 or 4 different trips that are all inside the realm of possibility for you, the timing works, the ship is good, the activities are available, and all of those things kind of come together, and you have the choice between 3 or 4 different companies, we will share with you which one we think is the best. We're going to base that suggestion off of the things that we continue to ask you, like, do you like luxury or do you like expedition? Or do you want a hot tub on your ship? That's sort of where the company factor comes in. It's sort of right at the end once you have all of the other options presented in front of you. Would you say, if you had to sort of summarize the main differences that you've seen between companies, what would be the things that differ other than the ship and other than the expedition teams, what are sort of the standout things that you think separate one company from another when trying to make a decision at what company to go with?
I don't know how to answer that because they were.
I mean, that's
so
fine.
Similar.
No, that's the thing is if you don't know how to answer it, don't feel forced to answer it because that is your answer. That is the answer. It's really hard.
Yeah, it's really hard to pick a company because I've been with three different companies and I came home happy with all of them. The expedition team was amazing. We had great landings in all of them. Even some companies that are famous for being more on the luxury side and less on the expedition side, they made sure we had landings all the time and that they kept us busy all the time. So I think a lot of the factor that people don't consider is weather. Of course, like sometimes you read this company didn't do that many landings, but sometimes the weather didn't allow on that trip. So it's something that you have to consider when you're reading the reviews about a company. Sometimes they just had an unlucky trip. And I've been with a company that had some unlucky reviews, and I didn't have all that experience. We had landings all the time and whenever we could. The expedition team was amazing. So I don't know how to answer the question. What company would I pick? Because they're also good.
And I think we can sort of wrap this episode up now because we don't need to talk about this for an hour. I think we've kind of covered the most important part. What we're trying to say is are there companies that are better than others? I think so. Yes, very much so. I think there's definitely industry leaders that should be recognized. We're going to sort of leave out names here just so we don't hurt anybody's feelings. And we want to be as fair and neutral to everybody. There are some standout companies. Absolutely. Companies that have been around for 20 plus years deserve the respect for being in the industry versus companies that are pretty new to the industry. And we're not saying that every single company is identical. What we're saying is that you don't need to worry that the company you're going with is not going to deliver you a excellent experience, that you don't need to be worried about going with a bad company. It gets asked in the Facebook group. There are certain companies that like I said before, there are certain companies that we don't work with. There are certain companies that we would recommend over another one, but that's not saying that other company is bad by any means. The overall experience might be a little bit different because they might be focused on luxury more than adventure. So the best thing to do is, and we say this every episode, work with an agent. It can be us. It can be somebody else, but don't get yourself wrapped around one specific company and then go to their website and then just try to hopefully find a trip that works out for you. It's better to find out the trip that works for you, and then the company will be whatever the company is. That's sort of the episode. That's really what we're getting to.
I agree. Like we said in the beginning, we try to build a roadmap and see what criteria fits you better. And the company, I think, is the last one in this roadmap.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, that's it. That's a good, clean, easy, short episode. And if you haven't heard yet, we've created this feature on our website where we want to be sort of the one-stop shop for all polar reviews. And what's nice about that feature we've created is you can actually filter reviews by company, by ship, by time of year, by highlights that we've seen. If you say to yourself, I want to see baby penguins, you can go look at the reviews for all the trips that people have only seen baby penguins. And then you can look at the times they went and you can figure out what best time to plan based on these reviews. Let's say you've got two trip options in front of you and both of them work really well, and you want to know a little bit more about each company, you can filter it by review. So definitely check that out. It's on our website. So if you go to letsgopolar.com and you go to About Us and then you go to Guest Reviews, you'll be able to see the link right there. If you don't see it there, it's because we've changed the website. We've made it its own tab up on the header bar, which is kind of what I had asked for. Huge shout out to Rico and the web development team for making that come to fruition. So if you want to see more about other companies and the ships and stuff, start reading some reviews from there. We would also, if you're listening to the show and you've already been, we would love for you to submit your review there. Nikki, you're halfway through your trip.
Halfway.
You got another company on your list. We'll make sure that when you go to the Arctic this year, we're going to put you with another company so that you can keep adding it to your experiences. This is really important for us as a travel agency planning these trips for you, that we send our team out. with as many companies as possible so that we have firsthand knowledge to explain to everybody what these differences are. I hope everybody enjoyed this episode. Again, a little bit shorter one. It's not as complicated as I think it needed to be. Thanks again for everybody for listening in. I really appreciate Rico. You'll be coming on the show a lot more often. You've done good for your first episode. Anybody else have anything
to put the thoughts in words, but yeah.
The only reason I want to extend this episode longer is because as soon as we finish this recording, I have to have a meeting with Rico, and I'm going to probably be told what to do because we make jokes that Rico is like my second wife. He just keeps my life in order. As always, thank you all for tuning in. Thank you to our guest, Ricardo, Nikki, another great episode. We're excited for you to tell us more about your trip when you get back. We'll see you probably in the ocean on the next one. If the timing is right, you should still be in the ocean, middle of the ocean somewhere on our next recording. We've got some great episodes coming up, but again, we would love to hear what you want to hear about. Please send us an email. It's info@thedrakeshake.com. If you're interested in booking a trip and talking to somebody on the team to plan your trip, you can always visit our website, letsgopolar.com. Use either the contact form or the trip request form, and somebody from the team will get back in touch with you and we'll start planning this with you. This is a team effort and we love doing this. So feel free to reach out to us and send us some emails. And don't forget to join the Facebook group. It's Antarctica Travel Group. It is the largest polar focused community on the web. Thank you, everybody. My name is Neil Drake, and that was The Shake.
If you found today's episode helpful, don't forget to subscribe. Every week, we discuss a new topic in depth. And if you have any questions, feedback, or just want to say hey, feel free to drop us a line at info@thedrakeshake.com. Thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you in the next episode.